Okay, we're live.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. After a bit of a summer hiatus, we are back in action. We have figured out how to use the new Zoom configuration, kind of, mostly by proxy to Michael Dawson, and him having figured out how to make everything work. I've got some of the basics set up, and apparently still some things to learn. Last time we got together, we had a bit of a heavy discussion about the future of user feedback and where my availability is going, where we're collectively going, and Michael, that continues to be my state. I've got three commitments right now: Node.js community committee, user feedback, and CNCF SIG security. And it'd be nice to get that down to 2, to be able to get to a point where I'm solidly able to continue, fulfilling those responsibilities. Michael, how are things going in the OpenJS Foundation? And I've heard Tracy, and when we couldn't log in last week, Tracy Lee shared with me that there is some interest in potentially bringing these efforts into the CPC, the Cross Project Council. Is that something that you can represent
I think the way I'd put it is that people recognize that a number of these issues are broader than just Node. So you could imagine a user feedback at the CPC level, but I think we'd have to figure out what that means versus what's going on here, right? Like, does it make sense to try and get more generic feedback versus feedback on using Node? And it's not clear in my mind whether that makes sense yet or not, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and also, this working group was, kind of founded in a time of existential pain in the project. There's a disconnect between, what the core team was working on and, needs of the community. This was before we'd begun to, really integrate promises as a prime example. Community efforts had gone all in, all across the ecosystem on promises, and we in Node were at a point where we weren't ready to move forward with that, largely due to technical constraints with V8. But there's still tension that needed to be resolved. So that's kind of the founding purpose of user feedback is making sure that we're bringing together the needs of the community to serve as insight for collaborators. As we look at any other particular destination, I would want us to make sure that we're serving a need, right? There's a destination. There's a we serve as agents of someone, and when we get into that situation, I worry that we're not directing that agency towards anything, which can lead to sort of frustration and just not knowing where to even take a bit of context and feedback.
Right. So I guess I'm trying to understand. Like, are you saying that you'd be concerned if it moved to the JS level because it would be as clear?
No, I've heard that there was interest in doing that at the OpenJS level. totally, agree that there's an opportunity to do it. What I haven't understood is doing it for whom, and flipping that question.
Right.
Who is interested in getting feedback, especially since the mandate of the OpenJS Foundation is so broad. Like if I'm giving feedback, if I'm collecting and giving feedback for the jQuery project,
Yeah.
when it is in I'm going to mischaracterize it, not maintenance mode, but like it is in whatever the sort of we're going to caretake the
Right.
project, but it's not
Maybe
getting
just, so yeah, I think I'm with you on that in that we had a clear mission, and I think we still have that mission because I don't
sure with Node, right?
like for Node, it's like we still have a situation where I think we can improve on the flow of information from the end users to the project. And we've tried a few different ways, but we haven't solved the problem yet. I mean, I think in my mind, if we had solved the problem, had a really good pattern that other projects could apply,
Yep.
then I would say, hey, at the node level, maybe it's time to say, okay, let's share the experience and move it up. But I don't think we've done that yet, right? We're still trying to figure out how to effectively, fill that need on the node level.
Right.
And from my perspective, we don't have so many extra cycles that we can take on something else.
Yeah, that's the big one for me.
So it's more like, I think, staying focused on the node side of things and trying to figure it out in one case actually could be what's better for everybody in the longer term, right? Because if we start to now try and look at a bigger problem without having figured out this first one, that may just dilute and slow us down further, right?
Right.
Now,
go ahead.
Now, I'll just temper that with, if we have a bunch of people who step up and say, hey, I'm super interested in doing this for other projects, and who start to pull, like if there's a really strong pull, and that means we're going to have more people getting involved, then yeah, I think that makes sense. But if it's just let's move what we've got and the people up, I'd be more like, hey, let's continue to focus on Node for a while.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. And just counting our wins and our successes, we've been way more successful in helping collaborators and folks that are looking for a way to get involved in the project. Like the Promises Initiative, like the benchmark working group, looking for more feedback. So project to project. The tooling, working group and supporting those needs, the efforts around, that eventually became the module working group. Those have been, very successful in facilitating things around the project where, I've always sort of reached for is that broader end user community in Node. And most of the time when I'm, doing these sessions, like folks want to hear more. They want more insight into what's going on, but they aren't necessarily at a loggerhead with any need, right? The tooling modules, those are needs. Like those are real needs that we need to address in the ecosystem. And in this last pass of outreach, we identified another need, which is our working group leaders desiring and needing access to content and context around the project. It's not really that bidirectional channel of user feedback and listening and establishing the channel for listening. It's really just the need for bidirectional context from the foundation that I think materially changes the direction of this effort if we're going to go there, and actually ratchets up the amount of work that would produce. Right.
So
content.
I guess I'm not in the loop. Can you give me a little more context or
for the meetups?
Because I think I must have missed that discussion.
So the meetups, so as we set up the V12 current release, and the meetups around that. A lot of our meetup organizers across the world were very interested in being able to present the information that we're gathering then.
Right.
Being held abreast of everything that's going on in Node and being able to share that, what's new, what's exciting.
Okay. I think I'm thinking the wrong thing when you said working group leaders. You meant the people who are leading the
meetup leaders. Sorry.
Yeah, okay, so that makes sense. Okay, so now I understand better.
Yeah. So meetup. I said working group leaders. I meant folks organizing meetup organizers. Across the world. Want to get plugged in to what's going on in the Node.js Foundation, OpenJS, and have that context of what's happening, and so that's great. That again doesn't quite get to the end users. It's another contingent of active. Active collaborators that we've identified and we have the opportunity to serve. What was it called? Outreach.
Yep.
Like our biggest problem, our biggest challenge with those efforts, whether it's outreach, whether it's the evangelism working group. Is just bandwidth. Those are full-time roles with many of our team members. That we all individually who are in those roles, spend significant time building collateral, synthesizing those things. So as a volunteer effort, it's a pretty heavy volunteer task. It's not, you're showing up to the meeting and doing a thing. It's really the meeting is an anchor for, hours of work outside of, the actual meeting, where the meeting is just a check-in or an alignment. And, that's something that I absolutely do not have the bandwidth for right now.
Right, the outreach to those groups and so I think there is a separate initiative under outreach, and that's why I think that's a different thing than trying to get feedback, right?
Yes, I agree.
And again, so if you're saying this team should stay more focused on the feedback side, I would agree with you from that perspective. That that's important. But I think it's like you said, there's a whole different set of activities, a fair amount of work, and we can't necessarily take that on.
I can't. I can reach out for volunteers, but I will also highlight that that content generation thing, the content generation effort that we've had in various permutations for years has struggled, even when I could dedicate full-time resources to it, or resources to it. It was still challenging. Back in the day, it was Tierney for a really long time, turning the crank and doing evangelism on his own.
Well, yeah, I think here, I think that's important. It's a bigger effort, but I think for here, I would still think of focusing on what is it we can do to help that flow of information back from end users and close that original gap, that as opposed to say building new meetups, which is perhaps new channels, and it's good.
Yeah, something the foundation should be doing, right?
Yeah, it's more like I would start first still with, if we've got existing ones we can leverage, like we were talking about, and saying hey, if you can run a feedback session for us as part of your meetup, that makes sense to me, versus we'll help you start a meetup in the first place. Because it's different and more work, and again, if we completely solve this problem, then it's time to move on to the other one. But I think there's still work to be done to say we've got a good flow of information from our end users into the project, and we at least from what I understand, my current perspective is we could use more of that, and
Right.
unless we finally discover there just aren't any problems, and that's why we don't hear anything, right?
Right, and Ahmed pinged me yesterday, and he apologized for not being able to make today. I should have mentioned that at the top. But that enterprise group definitely has pain that we're experiencing at scale. Especially at PayPal, we're just getting to a point where we can adopt 10.
Right.
At this point in the cycle, due to TLS, due to OpenSSL are finally getting to a point where we've patched that enough and we're able to use that. So that's been a big issue. We want to be able to big pain point to be that behind, especially with all the improvements, performance improvements to the platform in 10, being behind there, is costly. So, we have peers there that share pain, and like, so there's need that's really valuable. I hope Ahmed will continue to be able to do that as the new role that he is in ramps up. It's a bit of a risk. I know the challenge. So that, like, the enterprise feedback, I see pain, and most of the resolution of that pain can be sort of facilitated through peer collaboration, right? PayPal collaborating with the Netflix and Walmart, like, we see each other scale and compare notes and come to a resolution. And then if we need something particular from core, we can go ask and bring that feedback. But most of the pain is on the receiving end and integration at the scale that folks are operating. Because that's a strong place for us for user feedback. Then that end user feedback. Keep pushing, keep looking for new techniques, new approaches, and I'm increasingly of the mind that our end users aren't in enough pain for us to set up a listening signal and serve the needs. Folks are happy with Node. Folks are challenged. Biggest challenge that I heard in earlier this year that folks were having with adoption of Node, it comes from AWS Lambda in the Bay Area, being a bit stale in their Node release. So it's a platform provider, not a Node core challenge, and we have relatively limited influence on a platform provider like that. So we can highlight them. We could even sort of name and shame them for multiple reasons. But
that's not so.
Right.
Like, I don't think that really fits into what we're looking for, to make sure we have all the information to make the right decisions. And if people are deciding, like, hey, I want to work on this or that, and they've got a choice, and they have all the information to make the choice they want to make, of course, but also based on what people are saying they think is important too. But if the answer is there really isn't, it's like, but you're saying that right now, there's just not enough pain. People are just happy. It's like, that's what I like. And
Node's awesome, right? And it works, and it does the things that I need it to do, and I'm not feeling like the tool is the platform is getting in the way of what I need to do.
Right. I mean, I do see things like feature requests will come in and languish. Uh,
Sure.
so it's like, that's, I mean, a different model would be to say, let's make sure there's a clear feature request channel. And then when things came in, you could look to see if that's a common need, right? Like you could basically go out and do surveys or do whatever to say, okay, well, is this one person's need or is this like
Sure.
a large unserved need kind of thing, right?
Right. I mean, that does balloon, just in total, self-preservation, again, does balloon into, a bunch of work that we're doing outside of the working group that, comes into the meeting rather than something, we can be, continuing to do through our public sessions, and, that stuff like, I would need to recruit more team members that have the bandwidth to do that, or get support from the foundation to be able to do that sort of ranking and prioritization. Or of course, one could build a tool that would do that.
Right. I just, I'm thinking of different ideas.
Yeah, no,
One,
I
one
like
way
it.
you do
I think it's
something like that is you would, we could review. You need to have a good feeling for what features are being requested, but then you could go through them in the meeting and say, hey, are these
nice.
ones
Yeah.
or
I love that. That would also give the opportunity for folks to feel heard and show up to a forum that they at least could be heard, right?
right.
Oftentimes it's for those of us who may not be working on the issue tracker for the project in the day to day. Maybe we don't know the context of why something might not be received well, or if it's that one thing that, oh my goodness, like, everybody once a month asks for that thing.
Right.
We've said no a bazillion times, and
Yeah.
folks have gotten tired of saying that. That's not really a big challenge in our community, but that's definitely a historic challenge in any large programming project.
Right.
You have, I like that a lot. I think that could bootstrap, could bootstrap something like that. Do you know of a short list of those things or tag in the issue tracker that?
I think there is a tag which is feature request.
Okay.
But I'd have to go look to see if we can easily generate that. But if there isn't, there should be. And if there isn't, that's something we can propose in terms of like, hey, we should probably have an easy way to get feature requests. Let me just see.
Top two are feature requests. Sweet. I got 138 of them.
Right. So, yeah, there you go. I think I get 84 open ones. Because there's kind of like there is the flow. So like there's a few surveys that some of the teams and working groups are looking at. So there's kind of like we have a question, and there's another case where like we're talking about full ICU, but that would increase the size of the binaries. And what I'd always hoped, which turns out to be seems really hard, is like a way where you would have this pre-existing group of users you could go to and say, we're thinking of doing this.
User council, right?
Exactly. Is this going to, you're going to say, what? No, absolutely don't do that, right?
Sure. Yeah, we would need foundation support for that, Michael. The logistics of managing those sorts of groups are actually fairly heavy.
Right.
There's a lot of ongoing touch points, readouts, and yeah, just kind of momentum building. Like you're
Oh yeah.
kind of forming a separate community and making sure that they feel involved.
Yeah.
If you don't do the ongoing maintenance of those sorts of groups, then they just tend to atrophy and everyone kind of wanders off.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you have to have something you're doing on a regular basis,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's an update of what's going on or. Yeah, we tried something informal, which was like, hey, we'll reach out to people, see who's interested in coming. And I guess the enterprise user feedback is a group which we should perhaps leverage more.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. If there were questions and needing to, get the reverse perspective of a group that is coming together to solve its problems, that for sure.
Yeah.
Right. There's already that group. So that group comes together because they have, pain points and, they can get together and solve those collectively. If there was, pain related to problems that, they have experience and expertise like scale or deployments, then that is a valuable group that has the context of the things we would need to be able to service that.
I'm just looking for there's the issue on full ICU. I think I'll send that off to Ahmad to say.
Nice.
Is it the right one? Okay. Let me just do that before I forget. I guess the question, what we've been discussing a little bit is like future direction, right?
Yes. Yep.
You mentioned saying you want to get down to 2 from 3. Is it that you're saying like to drop this one of the other ones, or there's that question, and then there's the separate question of future direction in terms of what we want to talk about, focus on in the meet when we get
Sure. Yeah, and just on my personal level, part of the context of that comment is I'm dropping cycles on all 3 to continue working on all 3. And I'd like to get to a point where I felt like I was meaningfully contributing to at least 2, right? So I'll miss ComCom meetings. We basically took all of July off here, and some of the other meetings with SIG security. Likewise, I was just too buried with work to run and facilitate meetings in July, and I asked one of the other co-chairs there to take over. So things I can continue moving them forward. I don't feel good about the level of commitment and responsibility that I'm able to achieve in any of those 3.
Right.
And that's kind of the underlying reason for that statement. I'd like to get to the point where the commitments that I have for open source communities, I'm fully able to maintain and sustain that commitment, and feel good about the work that I'm doing.
Right. So from my perspective, we don't have. There's more critical mass on the ComCom, right? So
yeah.
I think if you step back there, there'd be a gap, but we still have quite a few people participating, and so if you just from my perspective, if you were to choose one of those 2, if you chose the user feedback, there'd be less of an impact, I think, overall to the project.
There's less of an impact for you all. So I want to make sure we discuss that.
Right.
and I make sure that I continue to support. I have both corporate interests and wanting to support Ahmed in him taking over the enterprise group. So we at PayPal want to contribute back our experience, want to learn more about how our peers are solving challenges like the one we experienced with OpenSSL, and that's valuable to us. But the just ongoing turning the crank, and even really making sure that we have a good agenda and a direction. I'm definitely struggling with that.
Right. Okay. Did I say it wrong? Like, I figure I was saying for you to, it'd be better if you stayed with the user feedback and dropped ComCom.
Oh, okay.
That's what I meant to say. I meant to say is we've got lots of people at the ComCom level. They're pushing different initiatives. So in my mind, it's better if you continue to help, and if you had more cycles to push on the user feedback side versus the generic ComCom stuff, right? Because I don't think we have a huge problem in the generic ComCom stuff.
I agree with that.
Keeping the initiatives going. Right.
I agree with that. In that calculus, like ComCom and that level of participation anchors me, right? It helps me, like participating in that forum helps me understand and better listen to the pain of what's going on in the project. So no longer having an engineering team with a bunch of core collaborators working day to day, so I don't have that sort of data input or the ComCom. That's that's part of the challenge there. Is in facilitating user feedback, it has to be directed somewhere. And if we don't have the external audience that we're connecting things from, and the internal connective tissue that we're driving things to, then it's just me talking. There's probably enough of that.
It's trying to build that is the
right.
That's the hard part, right? Like if we'd had that figured out, then we'd be rolling, right? It's just, I guess we still haven't quite figured out how we get that flow of information coming in.
Wait a second, guys. So looks like Eva, she wants to talk. Eva wants to talk, and I think she's not able to talk. She wants to
co-host. Okay, I thought I had made everybody a co-host.
I think Eva ended up having to, or her connection dropped.
That's weird because it says I can make. She's definitely. Let me change back and forth. Oh, wait a second. Somehow we've lost. I may have. Okay, she's in the attendee.
Oops.
Promote to panelist. Back in the panelist. And
yay! Now I can talk. Thank you.
Okay.
I lost the connection for some reason, and then I switched from my phone to my laptop because I'm home again, and for some reason that messed it up.
Yeah.
Sorry. Continue.
Okay. So
I was just going to ask. So I'm a little new to these meetings. So kind of what exactly are we supposed to be accomplishing in these meetings? They're every 2 weeks, right?
Every 2 weeks. User feedback is a working group of, or a group of the team. The definitions are tough. A team in the community committee that with the express purpose of connecting the broader end user community to our core efforts, folks that are working on core, tend to want to, focus and spend their time, solving core issues, programming, and not doing the more human outreach. This group was formed to, provide an opportunity for and a forum for that outreach.
Awesome. And is there anything particular? Do we have an agenda every meeting? Is it something that it's more an open discussion? How does that normally work?
Ideally, we should have an agenda.
Right.
All the way the other working groups work is we have issues. They're tagged for the agenda. That's what shows up, and we go through those as part of the agenda. I think. Okay. So, I mean, we have had some things on the agenda, like we were working to get sessions into meetups. Like we started by saying, let's see if we can organize people to come and give us their feedback in person. We tried that. That was a challenge. We then said, can we have online meetups? And we did one of those, but then the meetup basically said, nope, you have to be in person. So the latest effort was to say, can we actually use sessions, like a section in existing meetups, to get feedback? And the idea is really just to try and get, if there's feedback from the community outside core, how do we get that information back to core? Okay. And that makes sense. And we should, ideally we'd have like, here's the concrete thing we're trying to get done. But I think the last concrete thing was, there's been a couple of meetups that have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And has there been feedback that's come out of those meetups?
Yes, the main feedback is, developers aren't having, any large existential challenges with, Node or upgrading Node. They're, relatively, it's relatively straightforward. We've been working, hard since we landed Node in the foundation to really ensure and deliver stability. And yay, we're doing that. That's great. Pain point being AWS Lambda being fairly behind in its Node version. So it's not anything that the foundation or core collaborators could do. We'd really have to just kind of put political pressure on AWS Lambda, and maybe they have a technical reason or some sort of constraint that they're unable to do that.
Okay, that makes sense. And did we have anything specific for this meeting that we were working on, or no?
No, we don't. So we have. Okay. There is an agenda. So I dropped the issue, link to issues, and then we auto-generate based on any issues that are tagged for user feedback agenda.
Okay.
And we don't have any. So you basically have the core working, the core team of folks collaborating on this. Reconvening after a bit of a summer pause, and considering where we're going to go from here, and how best to use the time and our abilities.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I apologize, just trying to get some background so that I can be useful.
Really, we should have more of a structured agenda to make the meetings useful. It's just that I think it's more from what Dan's saying, he needs to make a choice, right?
I'm avoiding making a choice right now.
Choices are always hard. It's hard to say no to something, isn't it? I know I struggle with that.
It's hard to say no to something that you created.
Yeah, well, and that you are really invested in, right? Like you want to see it go well, but at the same time, you also need to take care of yourself and guard your personal time and make sure that you don't burn out, because burnout is not a way to help anybody.
So, Eva, would you mind if I, ask, your interest in, if you're interested in doing anything in particular, if that resonates for you?
Yeah, so I'm basically here. I know Tracy's been in these meetings on behalf of the foundation in the past, and she's been she's had conflicts lately with these meetings, so she wanted me to sit in and see if I could kind of take over for her. So I am really happy to help in any way that is useful to you guys. If there's some way that I can put together an agenda for a future meeting so that we can be more focused and get more accomplished, I'm totally happy to do that. I'm just here to facilitate and make your lives a little bit easier, because I know you guys are doing a lot of this for free, whereas I get paid to do it. So I have a little bit more ability to do it. So if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, Tracy and this team have really helped out and helped provide that the sort of continuity of context throughout the projects and the work that we're doing in the community. Fantastic. Really appreciate
it. Well, and I know it's a project that's near and dear to Tracy's heart, so I want to make sure I do a good job and help out too.
Awesome. Great to have you on board. And I don't know that we have a clear set of actions that we've defined yet.
Okay.
Interested to see where let me turn off my share. Where the feature requests could go. As I'm looking at some of these, they are pretty kind of detailed edges of the platform.
Okay.
I think one person, Michael Dawson, could be able to begin to address, and we need to if we're going to go that direction, I think we need to really recruit more core collaborators to participate in that, right?
Right. Well, and our feature, if you're having this wonderful problem of nobody actually having any super existential crises to solve right now, then maybe it makes sense for us to extend a little bit into some of those feature requests, because those might be also considered a form of user feedback. I don't know, in my mind, just as things that people are looking for. But I don't know how realistic that is on my part. So please correct me if I'm wrong.
Right.
I mean, that's what I was thinking. It's another potential way of getting feedback. Like the data's there, but it's processing some of the data for the project to try or doing something with the project to try and get into a form that's more consumable, right?
Yes.
Because there's 83 of those out there. I don't know that anybody necessarily looks at them at any particular point in time.
Okay.
Looks at them when they're opened. You could think about it as if that's something we should be reviewing those once every 6 months even, right? That could be something somebody focused on making sure there's some feedback could get involved in.
Michael, one additional thing that I think would be good to know to make sure we're doing useful work on behalf of someone's are those feature requests that are coming into the project challenging for the core team to process, right? Are they the last thing that we can get, or not, or is it that they're either too targeted or too specific? I'd like to understand more about the feature requests.
Yeah, no, agreed.
Do you know anybody perhaps who we could invite to the next session to kick off that discussion?
It's more if we could ask a question. I know from my involvement that there's no coordinated management of that list.
Sure.
So whether that's a problem or not is a different question.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, and are the features something that makes sense for the broader user group, right? As opposed to like somebody's like, oh, I want this little thing fixed because it's messing up my build.
And a lot of those the issues that I'm reading through seem like more that second set of issues that are like the really esoteric edge of the platform that a lot of those sorts of challenges for a mature platform like Node is really figuring out if we do that one little change over there, like is it going to break a bazillion other things because we're making some sort of trade-off.
Yeah,
to be interesting, it needs to be more than a single. Like I was more coming from the, hey, if we can identify a trend of requests or something. But I mean, I think it's more of the first question though is back to, as the champion, are you going to continue to be the champion? Right? Because there's no point brainstorming different things of what we can do if we don't have enough critical mass.
Right, and as champion, I want to feel like I'm moving things forward. So the thing I feel like I'm moving forward is or at least giving space to it moving forward is the enterprise group.
Right.
I feel really good about that. It actually it's 100% defensible. For me, in terms of use of time for work, it's great, and so that's great. Many of the proposals that we talked about in terms of working group facilitation and other things involve a level of effort that I feel uncomfortable committing to.
Right.
Just because of my current availability, not that I don't think they're right or needed by the community. I just think that in those cases, I'd love to see them serviced by a group of individuals who have the time, interest, and availability.
So, I mean, I guess if that's your perspective, then it's maybe you're basically saying you'd like to step down from the user feedback group and let whatever happens to the other efforts and be involved with Ahmad's leading the enterprise version and just be involved in that.
Right, or have some other explicit need that we're working towards. Right, absent something that we're working toward that's concrete. I want to make sure that effort continues and we can serve that enterprise working group. I have some concerns that as Ahmed evolves his new role, that he'll be able to continue to move that forward, and that he might need additional help and support in that. But we'll see. He hasn't flagged that as a concern on his end.
So I'm just thinking, like, in terms of if that's it sounds like that would make it clear and open up space for somebody. It's basically say,
right,
oh, we're gonna, the general user feedback is gonna go on hiatus for a while. Mm-hmm. Like, Dan can't manage the time to push that in the other dimension.
Yeah.
Right, and then it's like, if somebody else has the time to step up, then great, and they can volunteer. But it makes it explicit. Like, there's no point us getting together and just talking about whether we can or can't do something.
Exactly. Right. Good use of your times too. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's basically say, okay, this is where we're at. We either need to rally more people to get involved. We've made an effort on these different areas and haven't been super successful. Mm-hmm. I mean, we can take a pause and then regroup maybe sometime later, but the enterprise user feedback, I guess the only part that's still kind of active is the surveys. Mm-hmm. But that might be something we can work with the foundation to provide a point of contact for that and move forward.
Right, and we are primarily a proxy and a support mechanism for what the foundation provides there anyway.
Yeah.
So like it is ultimately that the survey is ultimately a foundation delivered capability. So it was a unique value that we sort of helped other people, other groups, other working groups, get better access to, better understanding, rather than the annual marketing survey.
Right.
But yeah.
Can I just jump in for a moment? So as a kind of parallel thing, I'm not sure if you guys have heard, but we're doing an Ask Me Anything. We're trying to set up a couple of those, doing them once a month, with the first one tentatively being in October, assuming we can get it all together by then. So I could also see that as a forum for some of this user feedback to come out of too, if you guys are at all interested in that, just to kind of throw it out in case you hadn't heard of it yet.
I definitely, yeah, I mean, I think that's another way that from the question asked, we may get some input.
Yep.
Just some insight into what people are thinking, but.
Yeah, I mean, we tried like a regular, hey, here's a group of people, get a group of people together so that we could talk about problems, or, try and have a forum where we could say, hey, we're thinking about switching to full ICU. What do you think, right? Does this change an impact or not? And again, I guess it comes down to, like Dan said, it takes a certain amount of effort to keep that rolling. And it just seems like we're not at the point right now where we have the momentum to make that happen.
Sounds good.
So, I mean, I don't say we need to make a decision now, but it seems like it's if Dan makes his decision, the two of the three, if he says, hey, I'm gonna focus on user feedback and can put more energy into that to help figure out next steps, then the answer might be different than, hey, no, I want to stay in the ComCom side, the general ComCom side, and drop this. At that point, it's like, okay, it'll be clear to the ComCom that, hey, there's space for here. Somebody else wants to step up. And the rest of us who are involved can also think about that same thing. And, we'll see where we've gone. We can at least say we've made an effort on this front for sure. We just haven't quite figured out the answer yet.
Right. And I'd also like to, before I make any sort of move like that, I'd like to sync up with Ahmed to discuss how, how we're able to keep that effort moving without me doing this sort of turning the crank stuff. Right. Because, he's been able to sort of, keep the efforts there moving, with some of that basic momentum handled, and the dynamic would change if there's no one behind the core motion of the group. Yeah,
I mean, I think as long as he's there, it all comes down to having a champion. As long as he's still there as a champion, I can help him just as much, whether we have this separate meeting or not.
Right. It's an escalation of responsibility for Ahmed is all I'm saying. And I'd want him to, be aware of that. And
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
That before I made the decision to say.
Yep.
Cool. All right. We'll end it here. And, that's useful feedback for me. And, I'll probably follow up with, Ahmed and probably Mihai offline to, sort of check with everybody, and, try to bring to the ComCom, the community committee, Node.js community committee, that understanding, and that would be the, since we are a team of the ComCom, that would be the forum where if I were to be bowing out of the champion for this effort, that I would make the call for other potential future champions.
Exactly. It gives people, a decision point to say, okay, is this something I want to, we're happy to let it go into a pause, or should we now, try and do something to keep it going?
Perfect.
Or have a break for some amount of time and try and retry again some other time.
Excellent.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks,
See you guys
everybody.
in 2 weeks.
Have a good one.
Okay. I'll tell you.
Bye.
Bye.